going over several of the new features in the Microsoft Dynamics 2013 modules. Oh, it's not flipping here. Hold on a second. So there we go. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to be going over today is the progression of Microsoft Dynamics 2013, starting with what was released in the RTM version through SP1 and SP2, and what we'll see in the R2 version that was released in the middle of May. So at the end of 2012, GB 2013 was released, and the functionality that was released during that time, we saw web client functionality, some new management tools, and hosting capabilities, and an upgrade to the Business Analyzer product. With SP1 and SP2, we saw the final releases of the various waves of web client functionality, which included project management, the manufacturing modules, service modules, and those types of things that were added into the web client to give the system a full desktop capabilities through a browser. Some of the other things, too, that they included were GP on Azure, using the SQL database as a backend, GP app for Office 365, a lot of Business Analyzer updates, and so forth. With GP 2013 R2, they released requisitions. As most of us know, that requisitions was primarily in the Business Portal module, which a lot of people didn't implement. It required a SharePoint server, some overhead and configuration and things like that. But that is going to be decommissioned out of the Business Portal module and transferred over to Great Plains for an employee portal capabilities, so to speak. They also released some identity management functionality, workflow capabilities for the requisition management, and some companion apps as well. And for future releases going into 2015, which is the second half of 2014, and 2015, they will see additional workflow functionality, identity management 2.0, more of a service-based architecture, which means that a lot of the eConnect capabilities are going to go away, where the Great Plains module itself will become a service for developers to interface with. And then beyond that, which they haven't really given us a lot of functionality on what we're going to see in 2015 and 2016, but a lot of it's going to be centered around Dynamics becoming a more clear web application and a service-based type architecture. So let's talk about some of the new RTM features that were released, if some of you aren't aware of those. With the system part of this 2013, we saw some home page changes. Now you can go to your general drawing batch history, which you didn't have before, which is kind of nice. For those of you that accidentally printed the wrong printer when printing checks, payroll checks, and things like that, now you're prompted to select the printer at print time, but that can be turned off if you want to, but you get that prompted now. You have HTTP as a report destination to output your reports to a web portal place. It could be SharePoint, it could be another type of document repository. Excel now exports using OpenXML to make it more compatible among different applications. They now have a new document attachment, and we'll show that in a little bit. Whereas now you have notes, as you can see throughout the system, and you can attach a document. Document attachment is a new and enhanced version of that. It's only available on certain screens, but it's a more robust attachment process within the system. We now have inactive users and listed users. We'll talk about that a little bit. Enhanced, alter, and modify windows, and the ability to print SSRS reports from forms. Some of the email enhancements that we're in this version, now we can finally go to 64-bit Outlook. So any of you that were using 2010 or 2013, I'm sorry, 2010, and you're stuck on using 32-bit Outlook to be able to do the email functionality from purchase orders or sales orders and things like that, now you can finally upgrade to 64-bit Outlook and use a lot of the Excel features that you see in 64-bit. We now have email indicators on navigation lists, so you can quickly see if a order was emailed out. It will attach a document to that. You can password protect documents that you email out to customers, so they don't get passed around or stolen or things like that if you accidentally email to the wrong person. You now have Word templates for receivable statements, which is kind of nice. and we have additional Word templates for sales order processing. So what are inactive users? Inactive users are your users to make them inactive. That you don't delete all their roles. Currently in the previous versions, you either had to delete them or remove all their permissions and things like that. If somebody left the company and you're not prepared to get rid of all their access, you can simply go in and just make them inactive. You can still copy that role information to a new user if you hire a replacement for that person to make the setup a lot easier. You can also define users as lesson users. What that means is that they can only access the World Online or the Fabricom company. The security can be defined any way you want to, so you can test out what their capabilities are in the World Online. So when they're ready to give access to the main company, you can just give them access to that to the regular companies by making them an active user as opposed to a lesson user. So a little bit about the document attached. Where it works right now in the RTM version is purchasing and sales transactions, and purchasing, sales, and item master records. So as you can see from the image there, you'll see a new paperclip icon at the top of the screen, and this is an example of the purchase order entry screen. So what would happen here is that you would click that icon, a screen would pop up that allows you to attach the document. Any type of document can be attached. The difference between this and the previous version of the notes is that it used OLE to attach the documents, and it stored it as individual documents in a shared directory. Now it's stored in your SQL server, where it can be backed up along with all your other data and restored in the event of a system failure. Some of the homepage changes. So now we can add Business Analyzer as a section to the report. So as you can see there, we can see SSRS being deployed in the homepage. All the default Business Analyzer reports are displayed by when you choose to install the application, but you can also add as many different reports as you want. Here's an example of the select printer at time of print. So as you can see here, I'm printing the sales analysis report reports. The first thing it does when I'm telling it to print to the printer, it's going to prompt me for the printer that I want. This applies to all reports within the system. Like I said, it's an option. You don't have to be prompted if that gets a little annoying, but it's a nice feature to have so you don't print to the wrong printers. So here's a little bit more detail of the setup of the document attachment. So you have a default location for the document attachment. As you can see here, you have the ability to turn it on or off. Here's my default location. So when I say attach a document, it's going to look in that directory for any attachments. I can put a maximum file size. So if I don't want to have like a 10 gig file, I can put in there how big I want the file to be. That's a user can attach. So here I'm attaching the document on the line at the line item level. As well, I can do it at the header level. And then here attaching the documents to that item number or that line item. Oh, I think I went too far here. Yeah, okay. So printing SSRS reports from forms. So in the previous versions of 2010 and before, you had the ability to have SSRS reports. You had to go to a web page. So if you wanted a trial balance or things like that, you went to a web page to run that trial balance and put your filters in. In this version of 2013, I can associate a report with, say, the customer. So I can assign a trial balance to this report, to this customer card. And whenever I pick this customer and I tell it to print the agent report, it will automatically populate the filters and match them up to the report and print that report and the agent for that simple customer. Nice little time saving. If you want to quickly print an agent for a customer, you have them on the phone, you want to email that all to them what their current status is. A little feature here is that now you can save your default sort orders. Some of you, may like to look up a customer by the name, and currently in 2010, it always defaults to the customer ID as a sort order. Now you can change it to, say, customer class or whatever field that you can see in one of those columns as your default sort order. So whenever you do a lookup from that point forward, that's the default sort order. So in the find by field there, you can quickly start typing in, what you're looking for and go right to that record. And this is a minor little update, but if any of you run this problem, you're setting up users, you're setting up your roles, you're setting up all the modified forms with that particular alternate modified forms ID. Reverting back to the default forms and reports that the system provides can be of a tedious task. So this is a nice little things that can revert to the default and set everything back to its original format, as well as only displaying things that are turned on. So here, a little display selected button there. I can display just the items that are turned on in my alternate forms. Once again, email enhancements, 64-bit supported, password protection on Word documents, and you have email indicators, as you can see right here, little email that says this record has been sent in an email. So if you do a lot of email capabilities, we're using it for sending out orders or order confirmations or invoices, you can see quickly that an email was sent out to that user. Currency translation, so they've added a couple, of any of you that are using multi-currency and MR, they've added a couple of currency translations. So as you can see here, you have the rate days average and the rate average. A couple different methods of calculating, and you have the regular single exchange rate, so you can pick the rate average, right? So it just looks at all the different rates you have for the month, divided by the number of days or number of occurrences of different rates, and comes up with the average. The rate days average, it looks at the number of days that rate exists in the month, figures out the average for those, and then divides it out to come up with an average based on the rate days. A little bit more accuracy as opposed to just looking at the rate for the month, for those of you that like to have as close as possible for your currency translations. So some of the financial features that were introduced with RTM, we have journal entry inquiry. As some of you know, the only way you can look for journal entry in history is you would do a smart list and look at all the details, do an inquiry, something back like that. The journal entry inquiry screen only looked at open year transactions, so now you can look at both historical and open. Now you have a reconcile bank reconciliation process. So that's one of the GL to reconciliation functions that you can see this, the reconcile processes. So now you can reconcile your bank rec to the GL to verify that everything posted through. You now have a reconcile inventory function. So now, just like you have reconcile AR subledger to the GL, AP subledger to the GL, you now have a inventory reconcile from the ledger to the GL. And you have some additional year-end close options, and we talked about the currency translation function. So fixed assets. So there are quite a few features in the fixed assets that were released. So you have historical depreciation reports that were added. We can reset the history in detail now. We can restrict displaying the reset transactions. Some minor little things like locking the fixed asset here to prevent people from making mistakes. Progress bar, very minor, but a lot of us that use fixed assets never knew when something was done because there's no real progress bars. You can now reverse out a depreciation in mass, which is kind of nice. You couldn't do that before. You can now have multiple fixed asset calendars for each book. So if one book is a calendar, you want another book as a fiscal, you can now have that in the system. They've also defined short and long calendars. So now that's not a tedious task of converting or changing your fiscal year. Fixed asset module handles that natively now. So that's kind of nice. Auto-generate your next asset ID. You currently have to create your own asset ID, so that's a nice little feature for those of you that want the system to auto-generate if you really don't have a need to define your assets. You now have intercompany asset transfers with a nice feature, so you can now transfer assets between multiple companies, and it will do all of the financial transactions. If it was sold, disposed, or things like that between the two companies to record it accurately in the general ledger. Now fixed asset transactions are batches. So now you can see what those fixed asset transactions are going to look like before you actually process. So when you want to do a GL depreciation, or you do your process to book your purchases, you can see those transactions in batch before you post them and make sure that it's accurate. And you can make changes to those transactions before you post them all for more accuracy. You can now post in detail to the journal ledger if that's important to you. Analytical accounting integration with fixed assets. That's new. Very helpful for the nonprofits that want to track assets that are associated with a particular grant, function, or things like that, and record the depreciation against those grants. Nice feature. And then documentation updates for MACRS is new in this version as well. Electronic reconcile. Now we can support the BAI format. And then encumbrance management, which is misspelled. Encumbrance is now integrated with the general ledger. You can now have multiple budgets for encumbrance validation, and then you now have a receipt cost difference notification. So now before, if you're using encumbrance, it worked with the accounts payable module and the purchase order module, but if you went and booked a journal entry, it never got included, you never got warned about the encumbrance. Now it's included with the journal entry to make it a complete system. So here are some of the new features here in the general ledger. So a couple of things: you can choose to maintain your inactive GL accounts as opposed to having them just automatically purge out. Minor little feature, but they added a progress bar, so we know what's going on with the year-end close. And we can choose to clear the unit account balances. So if anybody knows we use unit accounts, that's a manual process now. Microsoft provides a SQL script that you run that you can then, now it will do it for you automatically. A little look at the enhanced journal entry historical inquiry. As you can see now, when you look at the journal entries, I can flip between historical or open transactions. And on the journal entry inquiry screen itself, I can enter journal entry, but now it's added the fiscal year as one of the search criteria for that journal entry. But the same functionalities as to the user. And then here are the new modules added to the reconcile to GL. As you can see, they added inventory and bank rec as a reconciliation module. So those of you that are using inventory, this is a very nice feature. We have several clients that use this. It works very nicely to understand where the differences are, and bank rec as well. Any charges that didn't make the journal ledger because someone may accidentally delete it. And then revenue recognition. As you can see here, this is more of the service revenue recognition of AV service here. We can now post this in detail as opposed to a summary entry for revenue recognition for service. And these are some of the fixed assets setup options that have been added. So here we can reset the history in detail when we're backing out depreciation. We can have historical report options to the system, so we can see here. Once again, we set history in detail, but also some of the other post in detail that are allowed in the system now, as opposed to summary only. That helps in reporting. And then we can exclude depreciation amounts that have been backed out in financial inquiries reports. So just some of the new features in fixed assets. Here's locking the current year. If anybody have used fixed assets, you know that you can change that fiscal year currently to any year you want. It can kind of mess some things up if you don't pay attention to it. Depreciation process, new feature, you can reverse it out. So you put your depreciation target data in there, pick your book, and it'll back out that depreciation, so then you can go rerun it again based on new information you have in the system. Posting progress, but this is the fixed asset general ledger posting. So if anybody's familiar with the current process of posting general ledger transactions, whether it be depreciation or fixed asset purchases, moving them from the clearing account to the regular inventory asset account, they've now created this batch that when you go in and you put your criteria, down here in the bottom section, it's going to list all the transactions and what it expects to post to the general ledger. So you have the option of not posting it. So you can look at this, print your little edit report, so you can see what it looks like. It will give you the asset IDs, the documents, what kind of transaction it is, what account's going to post to, and things like that. So it gives you the opportunity to look at it, review it, verify that it's accurate. If it's not accurate, then you can delete it. Go fix the assets that are in error, or only process the assets that you want until you have an opportunity to correct those assets, and then reprocess them and post them correctly to the general ledger. And then here's the additional option for analytical accounting that you can enable transaction dimensions in fixed assets. So like I said here, you can have multiple books and calendars in the system. So you can see here, I can define a year as short or long. So over here, I can build a calendar. I can say short, long year. Okay, so I can have multiple years, what it looks like here. And then I can have a different calendar for each book. So they added this when we're setting up our books, what calendar we want to associate with. And then this is the asset transfer. So we have a source and destination company, but as you can see here, there's a lot of options here on what you want to do. I'll show the screen so you get a better idea on the demo here, but it's going to give you a lot of options on how you want that asset to transfer over to the new company and how you want the asset handled when it's disposed from the current company. And then here's a little bit about the new BAI format. Same electronic reconcile format configurator. They just added another file format to handle the BAI, and then another record delimiter option for the BAI format. And sorry, here. So encumbrance for GL. GL functions the exact same way, with the exception if the account is encumbered and associated with a budget unencumbered system. You now get prompted where you are on that encumbrance to see if you still want to record that transaction. And it follows the same rules as the encumbrance is. On the encumbered side, though, now you can see here, you can have multiple budgets associated with an encumbrance. So you can have the same account in multiple budgets, but be handled through different periods of the year. So I could have budget 2017 to start from 1/1 through 6/30, and then I could have budget 2017A to go from 7/1 to 12/31/2017. It could be a revised budget for the encumbrance process to handle it. So new feature, as opposed to having one budget, you can now have multiple budgets, which is kind of nice. Some of the receivables management features that are new in the RTM. You can now rename user-defined fields on the customer address. Before, we only had user-defined fields at the customer level, so now we have 2 user-defined fields at the customer address level. We can now apply multi-currency at cash entry. In the previous versions of Great Plains, if you booked the transaction or an invoice in, say, Canadian dollars and they paid you in US dollars, that was a 2-step process. You had to book the transaction or the receipt in US dollars and then go back and apply that transaction to the Canadian transaction to have it processed. Now you can do it all in one step. You can email RM statements as Word templates now, which is kind of nice. And then what we talked about, saving the default sort order and document attachments included in receivables management. Payables management. You can now void a check or credit card payment. What does that mean? That means that in the current version, 2010 or earlier, when we posted a credit card, if anybody uses this a lot, it creates a transaction for that credit card vendor to be paid. When you voided that credit card transaction in the vendor to be paid, it didn't do anything with the original transaction for the vendor where that transaction actually occurred. Now it unwinds everything. So if I void that credit card payment for the credit card company, it's going to go back and unwind the transaction for the payable vendor. Now you have that link between the credit card vendor and the vendor where the transaction occurred, that traceability going back and forth. You now have the ability to do an EFT settlement date when sending them out. So if you want to do your EFTs today, but not have them processed at the bank because you're going on vacation and you want to process them Friday, or that's just your rule, you do it on Tuesdays, you process on Fridays, you can now add the settlement date to the file as one of the options. They changed some length and delimit options to handle more of the European banking processes and things like that, but as well for some of the banks in the U.S. that don't abide by standard EFT formats or ACH formats, you can have that as well. You can now change non-1099 vendor in transactions. You have document attachment again. They've added the reprint payable checks and remittance forms. So if a vendor doesn't have or lost their remittance, you can reprint that and just email it off to them. You can print the 1096 form. However, just like the other forms in Great Plains, it doesn't print on pre-printed forms. I'm sorry, it doesn't print the form. It only prints on pre-printed forms. You can save default sort order or vendor lookups, edit 1099 transaction, and you can edit payables transactions by changing the remit to address and 1099 information. On the remit to address, in the previous versions, your kind of stuff, you couldn't change that. If you picked the wrong remit to address, you had to void the transaction and re-enter it back in. Some of the analytical, just a couple of new features here. Now you have check links to validate the data, and copier series now includes the dimension codes when you copy journal entry, sales orders, and purchase orders. So you don't have to re-enter that information in or remember what it is. Okay, so let's look at a couple of these features in 2013 here real quick. So let's look at document attach for a second. So where's my document attachment set up here? Going blind. There you go. So this is the document attachment setup. Right now I'm currently running SP2, so there's a couple of new features in here that from SP1. So here I turned on allow the document attachments feature. I created a default location. So what does that mean is when I go and I want to attach a document, that's the first place it's going to look for attachments. I can change the directory that I want to find a document, but that's where it's going to default to. So if you have a process of saving scanned documents out to the network, it's good to set this here. This little option here is once I attach that document saved in SQL Server, if I want to delete that from that attachments directory, it will delete it as soon as I attach that to the transaction. If we can allow attachments to be deleted, and we can put a password on it so only certain people can delete attachment if you want to. And some of these things down here, so as we assign attachments to customers, items, and vendors, if we want those to flow over to the transaction, so say there's an agreement or something like that associated with a vendor or a customer, and you want that to flow to the sales order or purchase order, you can send that, have that flow over to the transaction, as well as this is a service pack 2 function, and a 2 function, but is to send attachments in an email. So you can include attachments when you're sending emails out through the system. So let's look at the sales transaction entry screen here, and we'll just do a little quick attachment. So I'm going to have an order I'm going to pull up here. So as you can see here, they've added this new button here, and then we have the button here for attachments. So if I wanted to attach a document here to this transaction, as you can see, I have unlimited attachments I can have. I'm just going to pick anything here, which I don't have there. Let's find a document here. There you go. So I attach the document and check everything looks good. I can associate attributes to a document. If I click on here and hit preview, it's going to know what application they're associated with and pop it up. And now, kind of like this note field here, it changes it to a paperclip with a piece of paper. And now I think I know there's an attachment associated with it. If I go back in, kind of nicely, if I want to delete this, it doesn't really get rid of it. It's going to throw it over here and marks it in the database that that files it. Not an active document anymore, but it's a deleted document, but I can still see it. So you're not going to lose a document unless you really want to lose a document. So it's kind of nice to have those out there. So that's a little bit on the document attachment features. The sort options. Take a look at that for a second here. Very simple. So my customer ID here. Customer name, I like to do mine with customer name. I want to set this as my default view. Clear this, pop this up here. Now customer name is my default view. Kind of nice. Assigning reports to here. You see I have my age trial balance, but the assigning reports I can see. It's refreshing right now. Hopefully it's going to connect it. There you go. So I'm going to throw here. I'm going to put age trial balance detail out here. There's out here. So simply click on this. And you can build any SSRS report and attach it to a customer or vendor card and have a print. This wasn't really formatted properly. And there it is. Quick little aging, detail aging for this customer. I guess we didn't have a detail aging. That I can then just email this out to the customer upon their request. Okay, so let's move on. Talk about some of the SP1 features. So things that are introduced in SP1, a lot of the web client modules and features were updated. So now we have human resources and payroll, returns management, contract management, inventory billings are all available through the web module, as well as Excel budgeting, field level security, ADP integration, the autocomplete capabilities. So as you guys know, as you're partially typing in a customer number, it will fill in the list of customer names that you can select from, and Business Analyzer as well. SP2 released additional web client modules, project series, field service, manufacturing. Now we can build third-party products beyond using Dexterity. So now we can use .NET assemblies to add in additional functionality to the web client, which is very nice. Fixed assets. Enhancements of bank activity statements and payment doc management was included in the web client modules. So what's not in the web client right now? So we got invoicing, AFA, MDA. Those probably will never make it into the web client according to Microsoft. Grant management is still on the fence. Canadian payroll is not done yet. Integration manager probably will be in the web client. That's actually going to be rewritten. Coming out in 2015 using their new service model. Report writer won't be upgraded to the web client because that's slowly going away. Modifier and VBA. You can do modifier, so you can modify forms and add fields, change labels and things like that. But VBA is not functional in the web client, and there's no word on when that is going to be available. MR Designer and Forecaster are not accessible through the web client. SP2 features. So now we have a Smart List Designer. So that was one of the nice features. So if none of you are using Smart List Builder right now, and you're on the fence, should I get it, should I not get it? Smart List Designer is now part of the system. So that comes with it. So you can create and modify existing Smart list objects, you can create new views from tables either within Great Plains or outside of Great Plains. It's very easy to use and intuitive. A little bit of smart list UI enhancements. As some of you know, that where you see the list takes up a lot of real estate. So now you can collapse that. It gives you more room to see the actual data being displayed in the smart list. Document attachment 2.0, so they did some enhancements to this. You can email it attached the documents. It's very nice. So we'll talk a little bit about that. You now have the Alt key as far as for the web client keyboard shortcuts. Customer combiner and modifier are built into the system. They're still part of the professional services tools, but now they're accessible through the menu options in the system. Same thing as vendor, combiner, and modifier are available through the regular normal interface. You do not have to launch professional services tools to run those options anymore. So financials. So void payables enhancements. You can reconcile bank without marking transactions. Checkbook ID on a payment inquiry. Little feature, but very nice. You look at a payment transaction and you just don't know what checkbook it was associated with. You have to dig in a little further. And then any finance charges, if some of you really use AA and you charge finance charges, you can now associate finance charges with AA codes. So let's go over to R2. So SP2 didn't have a ton of features, but we'll look at those in a minute, the few that were. But R2, they with the web client, they eliminated some multiple steps. So with the web client, it was a two-step process. You had to log in to a web page using your Active Directory account, and then you were presented with a GP login using SQL authentication. With their identity management that has been released a little bit in SP2, but really in R2, is now it's just a two-step process. So the user was on a domain, it will log them right into Great Plains, and then if anything, it's going to prompt them for an Exchange login to be able to send mail if something doesn't match up. So it's giving that true, single login capability that a lot of us have been looking for over the years with GP, without the two logins, your network and SQL login. With the web, it can take you right into Great Plains. It's not there in the desktop client yet, but on the Great Plains, the web client, it is there in R2. With R2, that is the first version that they're introducing and taking features out of Business Portal and building them into the Great Plains product. They are building their whole employee workplace within the web client and are driving customers to use the web client for the employee workplace, such as entering time if you're using project, entering time if you're using payroll, project transactions, HR capabilities, requisitions, things like that. So the first thing they did is they built this workflow engine that is entirely dexterity basis. Still has the same email approvals that you saw in the web portal, business portal, and things like that. But now this gives them a lot more flexibility as far as how to design workflows and gives developers the ability to also enhance this workflow process and build even more complicated or complex workflow capabilities. So these are some of the things that they have now that is in R2. Most of them are the PO approvals and the requisition approvals, but as you can see here, they're adding more. They're going to be customer entry approvals that has not been released yet. They're going to be a customer credit limit approval workflow. You're going to see a sales order approval workflow. All those things come into play as future versions get released in the system. This is out now. This is the requisition. So employees would go to the web client and issue a requisition. And since it's all integrated with Great Plains, not that the business portal wasn't, but this is all dexterity based. There's a lot more capabilities that you have with the requisition process in here. You have the ability to associate any of you that are using analytical accounting, as you can see here, the ability to use analytical accounting. Any of you that like to attach, you have a requisition, you get a quote from the vendor, and you want to attach it, as you can see here in the upper right corner, I can attach a document to it. All that's going to flow through the system. We didn't have those capabilities in the business portal and the requisition in that system. Nothing flew over to Great Plains so that the accounting people can see this information. So now you have a completely integrated environment with the requisition process. And then since it's dexterity based, it wasn't a closed system like the business portal requisition process. You have the ability to do a lot of enhancements, a lot of capabilities can be added to the system using dexterity and modifier by changing screen layouts and rules and things like that. So some of the system-wide capabilities that we had in here is you have Smart List Designer 2.0. So now we can create go-tos or use existing navigation capabilities. When you want to do maintenance, an option to take a company offline and then be able to send a message through Great Plains to pop up in the Great Plains session that, hey, I need to take the system offline, log out of the system. Instead of sending a company-wide email or figuring it out, it will just automatically pop out. We can do Azure backups. So if you didn't have an online backup system, you don't have tape drives, you don't have a SAN, something like that, and you want to use the Azure backup system, that's built into the system now as well. In the R2, you can reverse a GL year-end. So before you got to the end of the year, the first weekend, you decide to close the year, you don't think anything's going to come about. All of a sudden, you get that one payable transaction, or you get that adjusting entry, and you really don't want to do a prior year transaction. You can actually reverse the year-end close, process your transaction, and reclose it again. And you can go back and unopen prior years as well. You just have to go back in order. So reopen 2013, reopen 2012, then reopen 2011 to get back to 2011, and then reclose everything again. We can print email documents together, so that's the whole document attachment. So email in an order, the documents are attached will go along with it. They've added an R2 that we can print and email any report with Word. Email addresses are signed by document type, which is kind of nice. Document attached 2.0. We have integrated page management. They have a conversion for the OLA notes. So if you're currently using OLA notes now, it will convert it to document attached and put that into the SQL Server. And as well as it's available on the web client, the document attached. And they've also added, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but a poor man's document management, you can also scan and attach at the same time. So if you plug a scanner off the back of your computer and you want to scan a document and have it automatically attached to that order, that invoice, that purchase order, that customer card, vendor card, whatever it is, that's built in the system as well. We can now add SSRS reports to the transaction windows. There's some of you, and we have some clients that have a nice little order confirmation with the terms and conditions on. They do an SSRS, but they have to go out to the web page, enter the order number, and things like that. Now you can attach that right to the sales order screen, print it, and go, as opposed to going to another web page. And they changed the desktop window as well. So now we have a ribbon-type desktop window to make it consistent with the web client. So just a little bit more on the financials here. Reverse the fiscal year. Talked about that a little bit here. When RTM was released, you could default the asset ID globally. Turn that on. So just include the asset ID. They've enhanced that for R2. So you can have different asset ID groups based off of the asset class. Multi-currency evaluation is integrated with AA now. They created a copy and paste from Excel. So those of you who like to do simple journal entries in Excel, you just want to copy and paste it to the Great Plains GL screen. That's built in now. Reprinting the outstanding transaction report. So those of you that run a reconciliation, you process your bank reconciliation, and you complete it, and then for whatever reason you lost your outstanding transaction report at the time of reconciliation, you can now go and print that report. And they get the default sort order for printing and payables checks. So this is the business portal replacement strategy that they have. So they're going to be coming up with a employee self-service within the web client. It's not going to be released for 2015, but they're working on it. It's going to be a limited user role. The web client will be requisition management, employee self-service, project time, project expense. They also have other apps, business analyzer, procurement, time management, and others along the way that they're going to be releasing. So this is, I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is a little bit what it may look like. So it's going to be a pure web page. As you can see here, this is the payroll time entry screen. A lot simpler than we saw in Business Portal. Very powerful. Doesn't require SharePoint. Pure web page access. This is what the employee self-service in the web client may look like. So this is going to replace the Business Portal time and attendance. Allow you to enter time on behalf of someone else, which you couldn't do in Business Portal. So if someone went on vacation and they need to enter time, the time for payroll, their boss could go and enter it in, as well as this will have an approval workflow as well. So this is the map for the employees' apps. So November of 2014, that's when they're going to go out to HTML5. Give me Azure support, service-based architecture, and then auto-selected roles. In 2015, we're going to have a Windows 8 phone release. A lot of this is for Business Analyzer. You'll be able to deploy SSRS report content, off-domain support, meaning that your phone does not have to be VPN connected to the system, and then improved business intelligence, which will be actionable in the system. In March, we're going to have Excel content for the workspace, Excel content support. They're going to start building apps for Office for the employee self-service. So users will not have to go to the web app. They can work right in Office for Excel, for Outlook, those kinds of applications. They're going to be deploying and pushing those apps through those types of vehicles. Time management, June 2015, now they're going to build into HR where you can submit for time off, view time off balances, view your time cards, and now we can cross-platform capabilities. So the goal is that you'll be able to use it from any browser, any platform to access the Great Plains environment, whether it's these employee self-service or just Great Plains itself. And then in July of 2015, we're going to start seeing MR being pushed to the web app in Business Analyzer. Requisition process, again, is going to be more improved. Inventory and non-inventory item support, and once again, just continue to improve the cross-platform support of the application. So this is a little bit of what the Business Analyzer R6 will look like. So it's going to be more of a Windows 8 design. As you can see here from this description there, you'll be able to deploy Excel content. So not only SSRS content, things like that, KPIs, you can actually deploy Excel reports inside of the Business Analyzer to deploy to the users. The procurement, here's a little idea of what this may look like in the future. So it's going to be a self-service user app, requisitions, submitted. So as you can see right now, that Windows 8 interface here. You have catalogs, so you'll be able to group your items in different types of things for the employees to be able to find them. You know, technology, office supplies, and things like that. And it will be cross-platform available. This is what the time management thing may look like. At least this is what they think it's going to look like. So more of a calendar base. Enter your time off. Enter your time that you worked. More of an intuitive calendar-based interface for the users. And that's the end of the presentation. So let's go back here to Great Plains for a second. I just want to show you a little bit about Smart List, if those of you who haven't seen it. Let me cancel this here. Let me turn this off here. Both installed here. It doesn't work. Smart List Builder kind of like takes over your system if you haven't turned on, so I need to turn this off. for it to work right. All right. So a couple of features here in the smart list. So I'm an administrator in the system, and this is the regular smart list. So the thing that they added here is be able to minimize or give more real estate. So I can hide that. But now I can create new smart lists. So here's their smart list designer. So it is different. If any of you use the smart list builder, it is a different environment, but very simple. Called temp list. Here are my fields here. These are selected fields I have in this particular one. I can come down here and pick my tables. I'm going to pick my account master and pick my account number, account description, the heck of it. So I'm going to need my table relationship set up, so I'm going to relate these things here. Now index, inner join, let's see, account number. And then I'm just going to save this. And now I have Tim's list. So it's pretty nice, you know, to be able to create your own smart list now if you don't already own a smart list builder. Going back into this, you have a lot of flexibility here. I don't have to use these fields here. I can go, as you can see, I go down here. I can come down to views and pick any view that I have in the system to relate into my current smart list, or create a brand new one and just use pure views. The views can pull data from any system. If any of you are familiar with views, any system that you have in the environment. It doesn't have to be SQL Server based. A view can pull data from Excel, from Oracle databases, from Access databases, whatever you want it to be. Provide the user with an integrated querying tool capability. And that's the end of the demo. I think we have 5 minutes left.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. A lot of nice information. We are going to open up the floor for questions right now. Just feel free to type them into the chat button. We will be doing part 2 August 5th. You'll receive an email later today about signing up for that, or you can just go to the KTL website and sign up under webinars. We will start with Ed's question. He asked, how does the intercompany asset transfer work?
Let's take a look at that here. So under fixed assets, so basically here I'm going to pick my main company, and I'm going to pick big automobile just for the heck of it here, and my transfer type is how I want to sell it. So I can do just a net book value transfer, sale, taxable, whatever it is. So I'm going to make this an arm's length transaction. I'm going to call it a sale here. So in my destination company, here I want this to go over to auto. And I'm going to have it create a new app now. I'm going to leave the same asset ID here. Give it my location. And then down here, if you're retirement, with the cash proceeds or anything like that, and then you would just transfer the asset. And then what the system would do is it would perform all of the normal processes in this company, in the originating company, such as I sold it, what the sale price was, I got $500, the asset value is $1,000, so I got my loss of $500. That's all done in this company. At the same time, it's going to create the asset in the destination company, and now its asset value is $500 because that's what it purchased it for. and then it's going to go through a clearing account so that you can complete that arm's length transaction. So it'd be more like an intercompany transaction where you'd have a due to that originating company for $500.
Okay. Another question, document attachments. Can documents be attached to posted transactions?
That's a good question. I've not tried that. Let's see. Let's look at the transactions. And yes, it can. Oh, no, you can't. Nope. Documents cannot be posted to posted transactions.